I'm Chris Opie. I'm probably most well known for having worked at Global Cycling Network for nearly 2 years after I stopped racing. But before then, I saw myself very much as a professional cyclist, and I made a career from cycling, made a living from cycling between 2012 and 2018. Before then, my sole goal in life had been to get to a stage where it was my living, and I was racing and training for a career. I lived in France, Spain, Netherlands as part of that pursuit, trying to climb through the amateur ranks of cycling and to find my way into a professional cycling setup. I never really achieved the heights that I'd hoped, perhaps, as a professional cyclist. But equally, I sit here now, really happy that I had the opportunity to pursue my dream, and I really loved it when I did it.
Let's talk about the last 12 months.
If we look at the last few weeks, it's been amazing. I have 2 children, and they're 11 and 9. We went on our first ever family holiday. My wife's Dutch, so we often visit her family in the Netherlands. But this summer, we didn't do that. We went to the Alps and to the Ardèche. The Ardèche is somewhere I raced as an amateur in France, and I wanted to visit it and not view it as a place of suffering and almost torture, which is how I saw it before. And I just wanted to experience it like everyone else that went there. And it was beautiful, really enjoyed that. The Alps was beautiful. My wife's parents, Micah, her parents came down, and we spent a week together. It was the best 2 weeks, certainly the best 2 weeks of the last 5 years, without a doubt. Quite probably the best 2 weeks ever. Just really enjoyable, very relaxing, very basic, just camping and enjoying being outside. But it felt very, very fulfilling. It was really good. And it came after one of the most difficult periods of my life, where for the first time, my body physically doesn't do the things that I expect it to do in the way that I want it to do. I had an illness in April, March time, which was most likely appendicitis, but it resulted in me having abdominal scans, a colonoscopy, blood tests, stool samples, and repeated trips to different practitioners, and not very enjoyable period. Ultimately, there's nothing seriously wrong, but I've not really ever felt good again on my bike after that, which is a bit frustrating. I've missed out, of course, the Trans-Pyrenees, which was an incredible week of cycling. One of the best top 10 weeks of bike riding ever. Just absolutely stunning scenery and an amazing experience. Meeting people that were doing one of these crazy ultra endurance events and realizing that it's an incredible community of really social people that are very welcoming, very friendly. And that was really special. What else did we do? A little bit of bike racing in between. I did 2 road races earlier in the season, which was really nice as well. I haven't done any real road racing for quite a long time. Actually for 5 years. So that was a unique experience to come back to road racing. Yeah. A little bit of mountain biking. Fantastic winter at home, again with the Zwift rides that we do. And the end of last season, it feels like a long time ago now. It's very easy to remember the last few weeks. But 12 months ago, I can't really remember what I was doing. I went to the gravel champs at the end of September, and that brings us right back round to next weekend when I go again.
You talk about the Trans-Pyrenees. Do you think
I may not do it next year, but something similar. It's really opened my eyes to what ultra endurance cycling really is. Mm-hmm. It's very different to what I expected.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what your experience is in the field of ultra distance. I met you in person. Well, I'm not sure when it was now. I think it was November 21 for a 300 kilometre Audax in some playground in Bristol. I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes. Was it in the middle of the night, just before we set off?
Yeah, I think it was like a 10 p.m. start or something like that.
I think that was probably my truest experience of an entry into ultra endurance world. Based off the confidence of that event, I rode from London back to Cornwall last summer, which was 450 kilometres, I think. So the Moonrakers and Sunseekers was 330 kilometres, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah. Sounds about
Although
right.
That was through the night, which really made a big difference.
Yes.
We were very lucky, weren't we, with the weather?
Oh, it was really, really nice, yeah.
Yeah.
I can remember there was a few spots of rain, and that was about it.
Yeah. I had a 5-minute power nap whilst Alex, who I was riding with, his puncture. The next day was hard. I remember that. It was very tiring on the way home.
So London to Cornwall, that's like easy start, and then just gets progressively more tiring as you go along.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
really wasn't, despite living and training on the roads that I rode in Cornwall,
Yeah.
I really hadn't appreciated just how hard the last 3 hours were. Actually, it's the last hour is quite easy, but the final or the penultimate 2 hour block, that was really tough. So I rode with someone called Lewis Hull. He is from Torquay. We ride quite often together, although this year, unfortunately, not so much. We rode together with a little bit of support from other riders. We set off from Richmond at, I think, 4 a.m. ish. Had breakfast in Newbury, I want to say. I'm going to get it wrong now. Not Newbury. Begins with H. Should know it. Near Hungerford, near Marlborough. Then rode across to Marlborough, then across to Bath.
Yeah.
Alex, who I did these Moonrakers and Sunseekers with, he then left us there. He joined us up until that point. Then we met a gentleman called Adi in Somerset. He helped guide us through the Somerset levels, which was fantastic. Then we met Dougie there as well. We had Gabe join us earlier on in the ride, and then several riders joined us throughout Devon. So we always had a little bit of support along the way.
And that makes a big difference, doesn't it?
It really does,
morale.
yes.
Yeah,
massive. But the last few hours, Lewis was really suffering. So we are almost into Cornwall at this stage. Lewis, he'd suffered from the start, to be honest. I was really nervous about the ride. I knew it would be really hard, so I was very well prepared. Made sure I ate and drank well. Lewis was a little bit more blasé, perhaps. He was excited to see his brother, which is where we'd stayed, and perhaps he wasn't focused on the ride as much as seeing family, which is fine, not a problem at all. But it did mean that he did suffer later in the day. And we got to a stage where he physically wasn't able to continue because of the pain in his knees, which he puts down to dehydration actually now. So I said to him, it's okay, look, there's a train station there. I'll do the last bit home. It'll be okay. You catch the train. You'll be all right. You'll be back at home. And I'll be fine. It's not far. It's only, in my head, it's only like another 100 kilometers. There's another just over 4 hours. And it was the worst 4 hours of the entire ride. Really tiny country lanes. You couldn't build any speed on the descent. This is the little section of land that is between Dartmoor and Bodmin Moor. It's beautiful, absolutely amazing for cycling because it's so quiet, but it's very hard. It's very slow. Over Minions and then onto Bodmin Moor, and just took a long time.
I've got memories of doing Land's End to John O'Groats back in 2020, and kind of cut through the middle of Bodmin Moor, across to the North Banks with is it the Tarka Trail and the Camel Trail? That's the way I went, completely off piste kind of thing, and I always remember it being very twisty and turny as well as hilly. So,
You spend a lot of time travelling without going far.
Yeah, it took ages to get out the southwest. Put it that way. Yeah. Lucky you live in Truro, don't you? So you didn't have to go all the way down to the very spine, well, the very end of Cornwall.
Yes. No, I like the way you refer to it as the spine. I always think of it as the hilly back of Cornwall. There's a lovely road from where I am, almost down to Land's End and down over the middle. But no, that had been the idea. We thought about rounding the route up to 300 miles or 500 kilometres.
Yeah, why not?
Well, the reason why not was I got back here at 12:30 and I thought to myself, I think at that stage it was only another 15 miles to make it the 300, something. It was close to make it the 300 miles. And I thought, I just don't need to spend another hour in the dark on my own, hurting and suffering. I'm quite happy. I can save that for another ride. I'll save it for another.
So let's go back to your youth. Have you always ridden bikes, and when did you first start racing?
So I've not always ridden bikes, but then I say that I started when I was 9 years old. My parents and I'm sure my brother and sister as well, went into the local town to get a puncture repair patch from the bike shop from Clive Mitchell Cycles in Truro. And they had a leaflet in there which was advertising an Audax UK event called the Rosie Ride at the time. It's now called the Bob Mansbridge Memorial Ride. It was 100 kilometres. And my mum said to my dad, you could do that with Chris. I'm the eldest child, so I was the only one that was even remotely old enough to do it. 9 years and 11 months. So we did it. It took 6 hours and 25 minutes. To my knowledge, I'm still the youngest person to have done it at just a month under 10 years old. And it was amazing. Absolutely loved it. That was it. I was hooked on cycling. We watched the Tour de France highlights on Channel 4 that they used to have back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And that kind of introduced me to a world of racing, because back then I think the only way to even imagine a career in cycling, you had to race a bike. And that kind of connected the dots of, oh, I like cycling. I want to make a career in cycling. Well, I have to race. So the year after that, my family introduced me to cycle racing, did a few local events, and partly because the fields weren't that well attended, there was no proof that I was going to be good or bad, or rather there was no proof that I wasn't good at it. So we continued, and I continued to progress throughout my youth years, went on many trips to the Netherlands, which is where they used to have a week-long stage racing for children. You'd have cycle racing in the mornings, and in the activities, it would be almost like a circus every day. You'd have all sorts of different games and sports and activities for children to do. So that was the peak of each, or the pinnacle of each season, I suppose, in August after the schools broke up. And that introduced me to racing abroad and to more bike racing. And I actually always did quite well in those competitions. I'd often win either the Sprinters jersey or the King of the Mountains jersey. They would have a hill climb on a man-made hill in the Netherlands, actually, which was always quite fun. That suited me because it was explosive and the racing was short, and that was it. I just loved bike racing. That was all I was interested in. I'd read magazines at school rather than listen to the teachers, which I'm not sure if I regret or not at the moment, but that was my life. I just wanted to be a bike rider. I wanted to race bikes. I wanted to make a career from cycling and experience many different aspects of cycling as well. So that was it. It took a long time to make it possible, but eventually it was. And now I want to cling to a career in cycling somehow.
So as you told us already, you live in Cornwall. Have you lived abroad?
Yes. So coincidentally, I have ended up spending most of my time here, but that was never the ambition. Once I'd been to the Netherlands, that was it. I absolutely loved being there. I loved the cycling there and the people. As I said earlier, that's where my wife is from. I imagined I'd always stay there. But in 2009, so I lived there in 2007, 8, 9, having lived in France in 2006. I had a crash and I had concussion, and it took a long time to recover from. I had headaches for 6 months every day, really excruciating pain. They faded over that 6-month period, but it took 6 months for them to disappear completely. And I really missed home for the first time in my life. I'd never, ever wanted to live here. And all of a sudden I did, which is really weird. I think I just needed a little bit of time away from that life, and just maybe a couple of weeks or a month just to breathe and recover. It's easy to say that now looking back. And we moved here in October 2009. We've lived in the UK ever since, and we've moved many times. In fact, every 18 months to 2 years on average, but we keep coming back to Cornwall somehow. We've done 2 different stints of time living in either Oxfordshire or just north of Bath in the Cotswolds, and both of them absolutely amazing places, but neither of them wasn't quite the right timing or whatever it was. We ended up back in Cornwall.
I can imagine a beautiful place to live, actually. For people who live elsewhere in the UK, it seems like a holiday place to go. Just the climate's a lot better than many parts of the UK.
It's warmer in the winter. I think the winter's actually a nice time because most of the UK is wet, but here we rarely get the cold weather that everyone else catches.
I remember going to some place called Porthcurno.
Yes.
Down near Land's End. It was a really cheap Airbnb when Airbnb was like still quite in its infancy, and it was like incredibly cheap. I took a break over the Christmas period, and it was like 14 degrees or something. It was incredible. It's really, really nice.
Yeah, you really have to wear gloves in Cornwall.
Yeah, I'd do that again for sure. Yeah.
And the roads around that area that you mentioned are stunning in the winter because they're so quiet, aren't they?
Yes, yeah. There's no tourists around or anything. What do you enjoy the most about riding the bike? Is it the journey, the cafe stop, the people, or the bikes that you ride?
So there's a lot to enjoy. I think the number one overriding aspect of cycling is just that feeling of 2 wheels underneath you. I really enjoy the technical aspect of cycling, so the handling and body weight maneuvers over the bike. And I really, really enjoy just how the bike feels beneath me when I ride. And I say that because I don't always feel as fast as I might like to feel. So it's not always my performance that I enjoy. And it's certainly not always the results of racing that I managed to enjoy, because they were never as good as I wanted, really. Rarely, anyway. And then the people, every single person in my life is as a direct consequence of cycling and cycle racing. My whole entire network of friends and family. And whether that's because we've moved because of my cycling at a certain time, which has meant we were introduced to certain people, or because of teammates, or even people that I was racing with, or people that I met whilst I was away racing, referencing them, my wife. Cycling has truly given me everything in my life, whether that is just enjoyment or the people. So there is a lot about it that I love. But I think the number one thing that I always come back to is just how it feels to have a bicycle beneath you. And you feel it's very liberating, very free.
So the next question I wanted to ask was, and I'm sure the answer is yes. So have you ever bonked during a ride? And if so, what was your worst experience that you can recall?
Oh, yes, it's happened a lot. It's been a while.
Yep.
You do get really good at noticing it happening. But also, I think as you train more, it's easier to manage because your body becomes more efficient at burning fat anyway. So actually, it feels less severe as you become more trained. I think it would be one of the times when I was young, probably around 15, 16 years old in Cornwall. There used to be a group of riders that would ride. Actually, one of the riders went on to become a brilliant professional rider himself, and also he's now a director sportif for EF Education. He's called Tom Southam. The last time I rode with him, actually, we did the Moonrakers and Sunseekers loop in the June 2020 ease of lockdown. Okay. And we went there down to the Bournemouth coast, and it was absolutely heaving. But anyway, so Tom was on the ride, and several other local riders, riders called Andy and Stuart, who are very well known in the area back in the early 2000s. And I think they must have gotten to a stage where, this is before mobile phones, so I don't know how anyone ever contacted my parents to come and pick me up, or how I ever made it home. I really have no idea anymore. But we were way down west towards the Porthcurno area that you mentioned earlier. And it's always windy, there's always a westerly wind. So you have the headwind to ride out, and then you have tailwind home. Whereas when you're starting to blow, actually, you'd be better off with the headwind on the way home, so you can sit in the wheels and shelter. Yeah. I was really starting to suffer. I sat down at a petrol station somewhere with them still there. And I can sort of vaguely remember I was sort of on my own, and they were a little bit further away, and probably, if we leave them here, could we get away with this? Would anyone know? It was a very, very long time ago now, probably 21 years ago, but it's memorable enough that I'm mentioning it.
Yeah, I mean, when you're younger as well, you think you're invincible, and you don't know so much about it, and nutrition and all those kind of things, that you just think you can go on forever, can't you, without eating anything?
Yeah.
All you need is water, but really that's not the case at all. Yeah.
No, absolutely not. Certainly not when you're probably riding slightly harder than you should be, or using a lot of carbohydrate when you should have just been easing off. That's the knowledge around nutrition has changed so much.
Yes, absolutely. And along with that, the different products out there, rather than just I don't know, as maybe peanut butter sandwiches and bananas.
Had it as an emergency, it's there, isn't it? Whereas a banana sandwich you can't keep for too long as an emergency ration.
You retired from professional racing in 2018, and you soon after joined the Global Cycling Network. So what was it like to work with Simon Richardson and Dan Lloyd?
It was a real culture shock from the life I'd been used to. So for perspective, there was around 12 hours between the end of my cycling career and the start of my post-cycling career. I finished racing in Salisbury at a round of the Tour Series at 8:30 p.m. and the next morning at 8:30 a.m. I was in the Bath office of the Play Sports Network, Global Cycling Network. It was hard. It was very difficult to adjust to. It was very different from how I'd been informed the role might be. It was difficult. I think that's the easiest way to sum it up. It was a very difficult period in my life anyway. I think if I found myself in that same situation now, 5 years later, I may have found it easier to adapt to. I think ultimately it was a brilliant opportunity. I just was absolutely not ready. I was very busy mourning a cycling career that I hadn't wanted to end, which made it extra challenging. And I wasn't able to ride my bike as much as I wanted to. It wasn't the greatest team dynamic either in work, which made it even more challenging. So it's very hard to look back on it too positively. Equally, it was a very positive experience from the point of view of learning about life, learning about people, learning about how different teams function in different ways.
A lot of professional athletes in all fields move from sport into presenting, don't they? It's quite a logical step.
Yes.
I think as we all age and get a little bit older. So I think you made the right choice to give it a go, for sure.
Yes, yeah, I'm really pleased I did, and I think you're right. I think for a lot of athletes, it's a very logical step because they have the knowledge and information, and if they're fortunate enough, they're able to talk on camera and deliver that information. It is a good career, and it is one that people will find enjoyable and rewarding, I think.
How long did you stay at GCN then?
So I handed in my notice around 18 months after I accepted the job there, roughly.
Yeah.
It didn't work for me. It meant that I spent next to no time with my children. Quite a lot of traveling, yes. It is a 9 to 5:30 office job, and I lived an hour away from the office, so they're quite relatively long days away from home. And then at the weekend, if you weren't away traveling, my wife would be working because that was the only way it could fit in. So it was just very difficult. So it took a long time to come to the decision to leave. That's the point of that story. It took a long time to come to the decision to leave because it was employment in a time when I didn't know what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So then one Monday morning in October, I handed in my notice. It was a 6-month notice period, which was genuine torture because you've spent a long time coming to the conclusion you want to leave and it's the right thing to do. Yeah. And then you still have to live another half a year. I know it looks like a good job, but when you're not happy, it's a long time to spend in any situation.
Absolutely. Happiness is, in my life, it's the most important thing.
Yes, I would 100% agree with that now. So yeah, it was a difficult winter that winter, and they were very good in the end, actually. It was clear that I was finding it unmanageable towards the end, and they allowed me to go on gardening leave on the proviso that I actually had some sort of professional help to manage everything, which was the best thing I've ever done.
Remind everyone about the Guinness World Record.
So, as far as we know, and according to Guinness, no one has ever ridden a penny farthing further in 60 minutes than I have, which is something I'm genuinely quite proud of because I really found them very hard to ride and I felt very uncomfortable on it. Managed to have an average cadence of 143 for an hour.
Wow. I'm going to have to stick a link to that video down below, I think.
Yeah,
I'm going to go watch it myself. So after you left GCN, you joined the local UCI Continental team, St. Piran. Yes. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, St. Piran, I think that's right.
St. Piran, yes.
St. Piran. Do you still ride with them?
No, I don't actually. Again, it was something I wanted to do in 2020, but in 2020, there was no racing. I knew that when I left GCN, I just wanted to return to racing for one more year to try and work out what on earth I was going to do with the rest of my life. And I thought, if I return to racing, that's my identity, that's who I am, that's what I do. It will help me understand, I'll go back to feeling normal again, how I want to feel, and that will help me understand what I want to do in life. But 2020 clearly had slightly different plans for most of us. And I didn't return to racing. I returned to happiness and training and to my family and doing things that I needed to do. So in many ways, lockdown was the best thing ever to happen to us because I did actually have the things I needed and wanted, which was just time, simply time.
And with working patterns changing and people having, working from home, accepting of like Zoom, it kind of, you're doing the call sessions now with Zwift, it's kind of all worked out for you then.
Yes, massively. Yes. If it wasn't for a few of those freak things happening, my current job wouldn't exist. and my life would be very different indeed. So whilst some of those moments may have been challenging at times, it has all certainly worked out very well.
Yeah. I'm guessing number of people Zwifting increased exponentially over the last 2-3 years, and the popularity of the alternatives.
Yes, yeah. I would love to know the numbers on that actually. So when we started in 2021, we were obviously 12 months behind the curve of, I suppose, peak lockdowns.
Yeah.
But January 2021 was also a lockdown period certainly for parts of the UK.
Yes,
I remember going to the office we had was a lockdown period, and we instantly had huge numbers on some of the rides. I seem to remember 300 to 500 was massive. That was a really big ride. Whereas now, the peak summer, we still get up to 200. So I'd love to know how the curve looks for Zwift users over that period.
I'm talking global users here, aren't we? Who join you at the cult. It's been an international brand.
We have people in South Africa, in Australia, America, the Asian countries as well join us. So the Philippines is quite popular actually. We have people from everywhere, which is amazing. And sometimes you can't quite believe where people are logging in from and what time of day it is where they are as well. Yeah, it's really quite interesting. I've learned never to say enjoy the rest of your Monday, for example, because quite often it's not Monday where someone is.
Oh, good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
No, exactly, you have to avoid those.
And that brings me probably neatly to the next question really about YouTube, because YouTube, you never really say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What made you start a YouTube channel then?
It was purely that period of lockdown where I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know what the next step in my life would be. We were meant to be racing for the cycling team, and the cycling team certainly wanted to have awareness of them existing. So they were quite keen to have prominent positioning in the YouTube videos. So that it kind of came from there really. And I didn't know, and I still don't know with YouTube, what it is exactly that I want to do with it. It's now a hobby. And I mean, it always was a hobby, but in the start, I was able to do it like a full-time hobby because there was nothing else. That was it. That was all there was. So to start with, I could do 3 videos a week. And I'd love really, in a way, to have done that for the last 3 years. I think it could have been quite enjoyable, but there's only so much you can talk about. The roads are busier where I live, so actually it's harder to do. It's a hobby now, YouTube, absolutely. It's something I really enjoy. I really enjoy sharing very real experiences of mine in the hope that at least one person benefits from it. I think when I started, I always felt like I'd like to inspire someone to go on a bike ride if they'd watched the video. Whereas now I feel that as long as someone benefits somehow from it, either from my life experiences and my learnings, or because it helps them understand their own thoughts and rationalize things in that way, that feels now like the most important thing to me. And if somebody wants to ride a bike, that's fantastic as well.
My approach is very similar. It's just about me going out on bike, enjoying myself. It's not about education. For me, I do lots of crazy rides and long ultra distance stuff, and if I can inspire a few people to get on bikes and ride further, or to take up cycling for the first time, that's a win. You know, I think getting more people on bikes is always the goal. Not
only raises awareness, but it on ball reduces the number of vehicles as well.
Yeah, one less car.
But I think exactly, and also the thing with YouTube, when you work for a YouTube channel, it's not often very positive in the comment section. When you create your own YouTube videos, you realize that you're talking to people, and people seem to talk to you more. And I would say my personal experience of creating YouTube videos for myself is as good as positive. 99.9%. Every now and again, someone wants to have their voice heard, but mostly it's very positive, very, very supporting. And that's one of the biggest surprises to me, having come from a place where I thought I could never do this because of the comments.
It's a very I can't think of the word. It's not hostile at all, is it? The community is fantastic. It's like-minded people. This is a controversial topic that you're perhaps talking about helmets or something along those lines. So, where'd you get your ideas from with your videos, and what kind of things have you learned along the way in terms of, well, I'll let you tell me.
Yeah, so that's a that's a good question. The ideas I struggle with, actually. One part of me thinks, yeah, sure, you could be really, really clickbaity and really plan all the rides and all the types of videos that I make. But actually, the sorts of videos I really like making are the ones that really are very, I suppose, heartfelt, where I genuinely believe in what I'm talking about. It's not something that I've pre-scripted or thought about or bullet pointed.
Mm-hmm.
It's just my thoughts of my own learning. So I know for a fact that if I share a video, I gave up drinking alcohol. It will be 2 years ago at the end of this year. So what's that now? 20 months ago at the moment. And they are very popular because they seem to reach an audience of people that, as long as I share my genuine thoughts and experiences, are quite committed to either doing similar or learning more about that topic. So that's something which I've learned is an important topic to talk about, and explaining very openly why. I think that my best videos seem to be the ones where I'm very open and honest, which I'm very happy about, because I think that's important. I think when I really found life hard, I benefited from understanding other people who also find life hard sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And just sharing the bits that you learn about those struggles, the bits that are quite constructive and might help somebody, and then just trying to put a positive spin on the next step and what happens after that. So yes, talking about things like alcohol or training, that's also quite popular. And then
people like to be able to relate in some way.
I think that's really important, what you said there, being relatable to whoever it is that needs that video at that time, I think is really important.
And we're all human after all. Someone might see you as, oh, this ex-presenter used to be on global cycling, he's got loads of money, blah, 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 they've got these things in their head. But in reality, I'm just like everybody else.
Yeah, I promise I have absolutely no money. Sadly, that's why my racing career stopped, because the team had a sponsor go into administration. My comfortable, I don't even know if that's the right word. I had a salary I was happy with. It wasn't a very big salary, but it's just one that I was happy with. I was proud of it. It's probably similar to the national average for a single person salary at the time, 5 years ago, and they halved it a week before Christmas. And
cycling has never been cash rich, has it?
No, definitely not.
No.
Yeah. So no, I'm definitely not rich. I'd like to dispel that myth. My life is rich. I get to ride bikes a lot, and I get to go to amazing places sometimes. So yes, there are riches in my life, but they're not my financial ones. So on that note, then, really quickly, I know this is slightly sidetracked from the original question. Because of everything that happened, my wife, my 2 kids, and I had to move in with my parents. And we thought, well, we'll be there for a year. We've now lived with them for 3 years whilst trying to right our financial difficulties. But I have the best relationship I've ever had with my parents because of it. And well, we always had a good relationship, but it's now one that they won't be here forever. And I'll be able to one day say those were some of the best years, where we got to spend time either with each other or avoiding each other sometimes. Just it's a gift which was very unexpected, but one day will be looked back at as being very special. So I remember someone once said to me, he was an Australian cyclist, he said, there's always someone worse off than you. And I could never really make sense of that, because if you finish dead last in the bike race, I'm like, no, you're wrong. I'm worse off. No one's worse off. And then you realise that maybe he wasn't just referring to cycle racing. Maybe he was quite philosophical and realised that we're very privileged to be riding bikes at all.
Yeah. So for the videos that you've had on your channel, is there any that you particularly stand out as being one which is people should watch, or you found you're really proud of?
That's a good question. Yes, although it's not on my channel, actually. Annoyingly, it is the Trans-Pyrenees video that I did with Nicole, or for Nicole, as part of work, I was able to go to the event this year, and it's a 30-minute video. It's the first time my wife or I have ever had a video of that length go out, and it is a vlog. It is shot by myself, which is definitely not a good thing. I'm not very good with the camera, unfortunately. My wife's better. It's my favorite video because I watch it and it makes me smile, and it really reminds me of what was just a fantastic week of cycling, meeting so many different people. So it really is that video. I think on my channel, I find it harder to find something which I really love and I'm really pleased with, because I'm a little bit more critical, I think, of myself, because mine is nearly always shot by me holding the camera, and I always feel like I'm rushing it in a way, and I can't explain why. But the Transpyrenees one, it has a more relaxed experience around it, and I loved that one for that. I've watched it at least 8 to 10 times in its entirety now, just because it's there to watch.
Because lots of your videos, you on your bike, going for like a short bike ride for a couple of hours. They're not necessarily like a trip away somewhere.
No, and that's a big difference, isn't it? I think having that journey where you're doing bits, hours and hours apart, not just minutes apart, really makes a big difference.
Yeah, with my channel, it is the trips, and I use YouTube as like a storyboard, to look back on the journeys that I've travelled over the years. And yes, I do watch my own videos because it's just, you don't remember over where you've been. It's just a bit of a...
No, I think that's really special. I think to be able to watch your own videos back and see it perhaps at different times, you reflect on things differently, don't you? So to look back and see it, and you learn a lot about yourself, I think, as well, which is really special. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I did the Transcontinental back in 2022, 14 months ago, and I look back and think, wow, where's the time flown? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, it was, a lot of it was a blur. So it's
I can imagine.
Yeah, so it's good to look back on the videos I produced and go, oh yeah.
How does that compare to anything else you've done?
Oh, that's just huge. I mean, this year I did the Pan Celtic race. I believe Alex was there.
Yes, he was.
Yeah. I don't think I saw Alex the entire time though. Did he? I don't know if he stuck around for the party. But yeah, that's the most comparable is probably the Pan Celtic race that I did. I mean, it's 4,500 kilometers, 13 countries or something like that, and loads and loads of climbing across the Alps. And that was my first time in the mountains, so there was lots of new things that I was ticking off along the way. So I love my mountains and climbing. Yeah,
it's special, isn't it? I'm not a fan of climbing as such, but it is a very special experience being in the mountains.
It's the reward at the top, isn't it? Getting to descend.
I do like the descent. Yes.
So we're out of the summer season. I think we're probably casting our eyes on 2024. You got any particular plans in terms of your cycling, your channel?
Yes, so I do. I found this year incredibly hard. I wanted to race. I wanted to race to a reasonable level just a few times, just to prove to myself that I still could. And then illness got in the way of it. But what I noticed was, no matter how much race fitness I lose, it doesn't detract from my ability to just keep going. And actually, I feel like over the last 2 years, so since the Sunseekers and the Moonrakers event, I've done one long ride each year, or one ride that falls under the category of potential ultra endurance. And it's something which I've become increasingly curious about. My wife watches lots of ultra running videos where they're competing for over 20 hours, over 24 hours. I spend time with Alex, who obviously does the ultra endurance events, the Pan Celtic. He started GB Duro. He's had injury troubles. And it's something which has definitely got my curiosity to a stage where I feel confident enough to now push that curiosity a little further. So at the moment, I would feel comfortable to do something which took around 24 to 30 hours of riding. And I think over the next few years, I would like to slowly build up that duration and the understanding of that. I don't think I'm ready to do the Pan Celtic or something like that, because I think my mentality isn't quite at that stage yet. It's not a physical thing as much as it is the mental side of it. I struggle when I'm tired. I find it hard. I've suffered a lot on a bicycle, and I want to make sure that if I put myself into a place of suffering again, that I'm prepared for it, really. That's the truth. But it still comes back to, I do see a future of more ultra endurance riding, because I think the thing that I enjoyed about the Pyrenees was just ride all day. That's it, as long as you keep moving. And that was really special.
And of course, with ultra distance, and it's just growing in popularity right now. It's getting bigger and bigger. As is bikepacking. Is that something you've ever done? Sleeping in a ditch?
No, well, sort of. We did take sleeping gear with us on the Trans-Pyrenees, and we did sleep outside 2 nights of the 5, I think it was. So I can't remember if it's 5 or 6 nights, but we slept outside on 2 nights. It wasn't the best night's sleep. I didn't have a blow-up mat or anything like that. We slept on concrete rather than on a nice, comfortable grassy field. I went with 2 people from London, and they like concrete, whereas I'm from the countryside and I like grass. So no, I haven't done a huge amount of bike packing or anything like that. I don't enjoy riding my bike quite as much when it's fully laden, but at the same time, once you're moving, you don't really notice it. It's just getting used to it. The first few miles, isn't it? I
might be wrong, but I think as you get older, what was probably called touring, cycle touring.
Yeah, and it kind of revisits how I started cycling with the first cycling club I rode with, Truro Cycling Club, who organised the Audax UK event. Yeah. They were all about touring and cycle touring, and that was my introduction to cycling. Really, I was always told stories about how riders would load up and go off and explore. So it does appeal to me, and it always has done. It's just I've never quite felt brave enough, perhaps, or confident enough to do it.
Yeah. So. Brings me to the last question, and I kind of had this format of a show a couple of years ago at the end of 2020, I believe it was, just chatting with different people, and it always finished with the question, how many bikes do you own? So I'm going to ask you the same question, how many bikes do you own, or how many bikes do you think is too many?
I own 0 bikes. I suppose it's a lie. I suppose I sort of own one, which is the first racing bike I ever had from 1998. It's not rideable. I imagine it would collapse if I was to try and ride it. It's steel and it's been kept in a barn. But I do have at my disposal, I think I have 8 different bikes that I could ride at the moment across. This includes e-mountain bikes, gravel bikes, road bikes, cross-country mountain bike. So I'm incredibly fortunate, and that's because of Lapierre UK, who I work closely with as an ambassador. That is something that's beyond my wildest dream. Nobody needs to be able to ride a different bike every day of the week. Yeah. I think the ultimate number of bikes.
What's too many? How many is too many?
I think I have too many because I can't ride them all. I think this is the sort of thing that's beyond my wildest dream. I'd like to point out that when I was a child, I never would have believed it would be possible for me to have a relationship with a brand that meant I could ride any discipline, which I love. And I really love mountain biking because it's different. My son loves it. He likes the jumps and things, but then I like racing on the road as well.
And pulling wheelies, yeah.
Exactly. Messing around on bikes makes me happy. So
when I watch your videos, I know there's going to be a wheelie in there somewhere.
I do like to try.
Yeah.
I only started that recently, 6 or 7 years ago, when I was coming towards the end of racing. I needed something to make me happy. Yes. So I decided I wanted to learn to wheelie properly. And that was it. When I was training, I would include several minutes on every ride dedicated to learning to wheelie. I think one amazing gravel bike would take you everywhere. And I truly believe this. I had from Lapierre, the Crosshill 5.0, which is not an expensive bike. It's under £2,000. It has wide handlebars on it, but you could swap them out. Proper gravel clearance for nice wide tires, but it has frame bosses, so you could fit loads of racks to it if you wanted to disappear and go off and do things.
Yeah.
Equally, I put road tires and really deep section wheels on it, and I won a local time trial in 2021 on that bike. So I think if you really needed one bike, you could definitely survive with just a gravel bike with wide tire clearance, and you could take that everywhere, and it would be amazing. If you had the luxury of having a bike for road and off-road, then that's it. That's everything covered, really, isn't it? I think
absolutely.
Cross-country mountain bikes these days are incredibly capable. They'll never be able to match a road bike on the road, even if you put super slick tires on. So I think, to me personally, it'll always be important to have a road bike, because that's very easy for me to be in touch with and to go and do. I would miss having a road bike if I didn't have one, because mountain biking and off-road riding is fantastic, but you miss that aerobic exertion. You can just pedal all the time on the road, can't you?
Yes, yeah.
Whereas off-road, it is that little bit more start-stop. Even if you're very good technically, you're still a lot of force, a little bit less force. But on the road, it's so smooth, and I really like that connection of smooth pedaling. So it'll always be important to have a road bike.
I've found in the last 12 months of riding gravel bikes as well that when you're on the road, there's less accidents. Generally speaking, yes. I think.
Yeah, it's easy to think, oh, it's a soft landing off-road.
But it's not. Not always.
Not always. I always fall off. These days, almost always, it will be off-road rather than any other point, and it'll always be my fault. Well, no, it's always because I'm trying to go faster than I actually can, I think.
Yes, yeah, I'm suffering from that at the moment. Like I say, it was only kind of this time last year I bought a gravel bike. So it just seems like a natural progression for them, go riding on the road all the time. And for me, it's kind of just continuation of the journey. I've done the ultra racing on the road. What can I do next? Which involves perhaps a slightly different bike, you know?
Yeah, I think it's a whole new world that's waiting to be discovered. And it's just adventuring on a bicycle and seeing the world by bike. It's the right pace, isn't it? Because if you travel by car, you're going past things so quickly.
Yes.
If you walk, it takes forever to get anywhere. But on a bicycle, it's that nice middle ground of you can carry stuff, but you can also make good progress, and you can see things up close and in detail. I think it's amazing.
Have you got any more Audax plans or anything like that then?
Any more what, sorry?
Audax rides next year.
So I want to, yes. I need to find the right website where I can pick and choose things, because I think that's the direction that I would like to go, because it is how I started cycling. And as I said, it's been really hard this year not having the physical fitness that I wanted for racing. But I have noticed that if I want to ride my bike all day, that's just there. And I really like that. So I would like to make the most of that before I'm too old, or before something gets in the way of it.
Yeah, I think it would be the something getting away with it, given the age of a lot of Audax riders out there, still riding into their 60s, 70s and beyond. Well, I think I've taken up enough of your time this evening, Chris. So.
It's a pleasure, Richard. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share your stories with everybody watching, or the viewers back home, and that's brilliant. Yeah. Excellent.
Hopefully, I'll see you at an Audax event or an ultra endurance event of some kind.
Yes. Thanks very much, Chris.
Thank you, Richard.
Enjoy putting the video together. And
I look forward to watching it and sharing it as well.
Enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care now.
And you, thank you.
Cheers. Bye.